Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the class of biology on the fascinating world of biology. Hi, I am Nushad and I will be your instructor for this class. Throughout this course, we will learn about abiotic components of environments like light and temperature, water, oxygen, salinity, pH. Here we will improve our learning skill, reading skills. Now we discuss about abiotic components. Let's start the abiotic environment. The climate and the physical feature of the surrounding are part of abiotic environment. Physical features that make up the abiotic environment include light intensity, temperature, amount of water available, oxygen content, salinity, salt concentration of soil or water, pH of soil or water. Look at this leaf. The hairs on the epidermis of this leaf help to screen off excessive light and heat. These hairs protect this plant from over excessive light or heat. Epidermal determined by climate. How do the physical features of the surroundings affect organism? It means physical features that are present, how they are affect their surroundings organisms. The physical features of the surroundings and the nature of the soil determine the types of plants found in a region. Since animals rely directly or indirectly on plants for food, the animals that live in a regions are determined by the plants growing in that region. Organisms found in a region are usually adapted to the physical features of their environment. Now look at this table. Look at this fish, a deep sea anglefish. Organisms of the deep sea have unusual adaptations for living in darkness. Instead of relying on its eyesight to locate prey, the deep sea anglefish has a long protrusions on its head. Long protrusion on its head. That's a long protrusions on its head, which is used like a fishing rod to fish for smaller fishes. A glowing piece of skin on the end of structure wriggles like a worm to lure prey. A deep sea anglefish. Deep sea anglefish. Long head. Now we discuss about non-living components of environment. First one is light. How does light intensity affect organisms? Light intensity affects the distributions and growth of both plants and animals. Green plants exist only where there is an adequate supply of sunlight. Some plants develop adaptations to reach the light. For example, climbing plants may twine around or grasp a spot to pull themselves upwards. However, bright light causes plant stems to grow more slowly. This is why plants growing in the open usually end up shorter than those in the shade. Certain plants have developed adaptations to block a screen of excessive light. For example, some plants have a dense covering of hairs on the leaf epidermis, or a layer of thick walled cells called the epidermis, just beneath the epidermis. These adaptations protect the plant by screening of excessive heat and reducing the rate of transpiration. Many animals need sunlight to see in order to catch their prey or to detect predators. However, some animals develop special adaptations for living in dark places. For example, bats are specially adapted to move about in dark caves. They locate prey in the dark by bouncing sound waves of objects around them. Now we discuss another non-living component of the environment, temperature. How does temperature affect organisms? Temperature affects the rate of reaction of enzymes which control metabolic and physiological activities of plants and animals. Most organisms cannot tolerate extremes of temperatures. Temperature that are too high or too low would kill an organism. It means high temperature kills the organism. Animals such as polar bears, seals, and penguins live in polar regions where temperatures are constantly freezing. In pairs or groups, discuss what adaptations these animals have that enable them to survive in such cold conditions. What is the main purpose of these adaptations? Many flowering plants are adapted to changing seasons. Such plants are able to survive through a hot and dry seasons or through winter by storing food in underground storage organs, shedding leaf to reduce water loss, or farming seeds which are resistant to heat, cold, or drought just before these seasons arrive. Cacti a xerophytes, they have fleshy stems that store water. Cacti, these are cacti plants. Now we discuss another abiotic component of the environment, water. How does the amount of available water affect organisms? No organism can live long without water. Hence, the amount of available water is one of the major factors affecting the number and location of plants and animals in a region. The amount of available water depends on the amount of rain and the pattern in which rain falls throughout the year. Some organisms are adapted to survive under conditions where there is a limited supply of water. For example, camels are able to survive for many days in the desert without water because they can drink more than 100 liters of water when available, then go for long periods without drinking. Some plants, known as xerophytes, are adapted to survive prolonged drought. Xerophytes may show some of these adaptations. Number 1. They reduce their rate of transpiration by shedding their young leaves or by developing leaves reduced to spines. Their stems become fleshy, storing up much water. The green stems also take over the functions of photosynthesis from the leaves. Part of stem is under the water. Parts of stem under the water. Water lilies are hydrophytes which are partially submerged in water, which parts of the plants appear to be under the water. Hydro means water, phytes पौधे means such plants which are merged in water. On the other hand, there are plants that live in water in very wet places. These are called hydrophytes. Hydro means water, wet means gilly. Wet means moisture places, watery places. Hydrophytes may be completely submerged, for example, hydrilla, partially submerged, for example, water lily, or free floating, for example, water hyacinth. These are water lilies plants which grow in water. Mangrove plants such as Avicennia have their roots buried in oxygen poor mud. Special breathing roots called nematophores project above the mud surface. Nematophores have openings through which oxygen passes downwards to the whole root system. Aquatic animals also show adaptive features for living in water, such as gills for absorbing oxygen or special structure for swimming. For example, frogs have webbed toes and fish have fins for swimming. Submerged plants, nematophores of mangrove plants. Look at this diagram. These are nematophores of mangrove plants. Microscopic views of roots see in the figures. Pores for gases exchange mud surface means roots have pores which exchange oxygens from the water. Now we discuss next abiotic components of the environment, oxygen gases. How does oxygen content affect organisms? Most organisms are aerobic, that is, they require oxygen for respiration. Aerobic means those animals which require oxygen for breathing. They cannot survive in an environment of low oxygen. content. However, some aerobic organisms can survive in environments of low oxygen content. This is because they possess special adaptations for obtaining sufficient oxygen. For example, mangrove plants have nematophores. Fish living in water of low oxygen content are usually air breathers. They can come to the surface of the water to gulp air. Air breathing fish. Look at this picture. Air breathing fish. Air breathing fish such as carp can gulp air at the surface of the water. Carp gulp air. Now we discuss our next abiotic component of environment, salinity. Saline means salt, salty water. How does salinity affect organisms? The salinity or salt concentrations of water is an important factor affecting aquatic organisms. Aquatic means water. Aquatic means water. Animals living in seawater tend to lose water by osmosis as seawater contains a higher salt concentration than the cytoplasm of animal cells. Saltwater or marine fishes have a waterproof coat consisting of closely fitting scales covered by a slimy mucus material. This reduces the rate of water loss. The cytoplasm of the cells of freshwater organisms usually has a higher salt concentration than the surrounding water. Hence, water tends to enter these organisms by osmosis. The cells of freshwater plants have rigid cell walls that prevent them from bursting. Protozoa such as amoeba have contractile vacuoles to remove the excess water that enters them by osmosis. Most freshwater fish possess slimy scaly skins which can keep water from entering their cells. Most aquatic organisms are so highly specialized that they can only survive in certain habitats. For example, many freshwater animals cannot live in water and vice versa. Hence, starfish and corals are only found in the sea. They are not even found in brackish water where fresh water and seawater mix. Brackish means those waters which consist of fresh water and seawater mix together. In brackish water, the salt content can change considerably. Hence, animals and plants living in brackish water must be adapted to withstand large fluctuations or changes in salt concentration. Problems faced by marine fish: water loss from cells, salt moving into cells from seawater. Look at this fish. Fresh water enter through the mouth, salt, water, tail, fins. Seawater is absorbed in the intestines. Here kidney is present. Kidney excrete salts and produce small amount of highly concentration urine. Seawater is swallowed by fish. Salt is seawater excreted into the surroundings by cells in the gills. Adaptations to osmotic problem faced by marine bony fish. Problem faced by freshwater fish: excess water entering body cell, salt loss from cell. Freshwater, salt water, freshwater. Adaptation to osmotic problem faced by freshwaters. Now we discussed our last abiotic components of why, that is pH. That is pH. How does pH affect organisms? The term pH referred to the acidity or alkalinity of a solution. The term the pH of soil, water, or the water in freshwater ponds or the sea affects the types of organisms that can live in such environments. Aquatic organisms are sensitive to the pH of the water in which they live and may die if there are drastic or sudden changes in pH. Seawater is alkaline with a pH about 8. The pH of seawater does not vary much. In freshwater ponds and streams, the pH varies from one region to another. Changes in pH do occur especially if the pH of the water depends on the amount of hydrogen carbonates present in it. For example, in strong daylight, photosynthesis in plants uses up the carbon dioxide in the water, making the water more alkaline. During the night, photosynthesis stops and the carbon dioxide produced in respiration makes the water more acidic. For most types of freshwater organisms, neutral or nearly neutral water provides optimum living conditions. Here we discuss about the abiotic environment component. In abiotic environment components, we discuss about the light, temperature, water, oxygen, salinity, and pH. And we also here see that these abiotic component how affects the life of living organisms in water and dry areas, drought. Now we discuss about our next topic, that is biotic component. Biotic means living component of the environment. The biotic environment, the living or biotic environments comprises all the living organisms that an organism interact with in its habit. A habit is the place where an organism lives. Habits means place where organism lives. It's called its habits. For example, a pond, a stream, a river, a forest, or a desert could be a habit. Why do organisms affect other organisms? The organisms in any habit are never completely independent. The life of each organism depends on and is influenced by other organisms around it. We say that organisms are interdependent. You will learn more about the interdependence of organisms later in this chapter when you study food chains and the carbon cycle. What is an ecological community? Ecological community. When different populations of plants and animals live together and interact with the same environment, they make up an ecological community. The various groups of living organisms in ponds, forests, seas, and oceans are some example of communities. The various populations in any community live interdependently. A change in one population affects the other population of the community. For example, if the population of small crabs living in the mud of the mangrove communities decreases, the populations of mudskipper may also decrease because there is less food for the mudskipper. It is also possible that the mudskipper may begin to feed on more insects and small worms to get enough food. In this case, the populations of insects and small worms may decrease. In reality, the abiotic and biotic factors in an ecosystem interact with each other in very complicated ways. The relative size of the different populations remain constant. This biological balance or equilibrium is like a web. Breaking a single strand will affect the whole system. An eyelash mighty eyelash. Small specific habits such as a leaf or the area under a stone are called microhabits. Microhabits can even be as tiny as an eyelash. If you look at your eyelash under a microscope, you might just spot a few tiny mites. Large population of eyelash mites live harmlessly on the eyelash of most people. These tiny organisms eat skin cells and oils on the eyelash. What other organisms affect eyelash? Mites. Ecological niche. The function of an organism or the role it plays in its habit is known as its ecological niche. Now, two species can have exactly the same ecological niche in the same environment at the same time. Otherwise, they will compete for resources such as food, water, and living space. For survival, for example, myna birds were introduced into Singapore from India to reduce the insect population. They now compete the native birds for nesting space. If resources are not sufficient for both species, one species may be forced out of its habits. Physical features. Physical features of the environment determine the types of organism living in it. Organisms living in an environment are adapted to its physical features. Populations of various species in an environment may live interdependently. They may form an ecological community. A coral reef community is made up of fish, anemones, corals, and other organisms. That is a coral reef life which consists of fishes, animals, corals. In this whole topic, we discuss about the biotic component and biotic component of the environment. In abiotic component, we discuss about light, temperature, water, soil, pH, salinity, and we discuss in detail about this abiotic component. Then we discuss about the biotic component of the environment. In biotic components environment, we discuss about the living things like stream habits, river habits, forest habits, desert habits, and a forest, and how organisms affect other organisms and ecological communities, in which we discuss about the ecological niche. I hope this lecture is very useful for those learners which are unable to completely proper readings. In this lectures, in this course, we our main focus is about on reading skills. Now we discuss in our next topic, we will discuss about the ecosystems, and I hope this lecture is very useful for you. We will meet in our next class, the ecosystem. Thank you very much.